Hey, welcome back, folks. Welcome back. All right, so it's now time for questions. Okay, we are going to do a lightning round of questions. Only the biggest question on your mind. Okay, so go ahead and choose the biggest question on your mind and go ahead and type exclamation mark. And I will collect all the questions. I will put it in ways which is, I'll try to kind of simplify them. I'll try to organize them. And then I'm going to pose the questions to all of us. And then everybody gets to answer them in the lightning round. Okay, so let's see. So go ahead and line up and try to be very brief, as short as possible. All right, it's going to be Joe, Alvaro, and Rupali. Joe, what's your question?
So maybe you can help me frame it. The idea, I'm trying to figure out where I am in my metamorphosis. How do you determine where you are?
Oh,
in
beautiful,
your
beautiful, wonderful.
Yeah.
You put it very nicely. How do you determine where are you in your metamorphosis? Perfect. Alvaro, what is your question?
Yes, we were discussing the fact that Nietzsche was actually the son of ministers, and even though it is assumed that he is, against, it is understood that he's against institutions and institutional religions, we're wondering whether the child figure is actually coming from the Gospels, as of when Jesus says,
got it,
that the kingdom of heaven belongs to children.
Sure. So your question is that does the child metaphor originate with Jesus, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Next up is going to be Rupali, Mushki, and Mike. Rupali.
Hi. So my question is the three stages, the camel, the lion, and the child. Do they mean the camel is the stage of acceptance, the lion is the stage of taking action, and the child is the stage of self-actualization?
Wonderful, wonderful. So I will put it in an open-ended way. What is the one word summary you have of these three, each of these three stages? Okay. Next up is going to be Mushki, Mike, and Phil. Mushki, what's your question?
So can we experience regression in these stages? Can we move backwards?
Beautiful.
And also, what are some disadvantages of a child? One, I have examples, children are impatient, and maybe that can cause us to move back.
So can we regress? And second question is, what are the disadvantages of a child? All right, very good. Next up is going to be Mike, Phil, Eric, and David. Mike.
In the text that I read, encountered around this is a dragon eating its own tail and growing into an eternal recurrence cycle.
Ouroboros,
and each cycle getting stronger and better, leading to the Ubermensch, which is another one of his things. So the two themes that are in the original text are Ubermensch and eternal recurrence, and I don't think we covered those in enough detail. So
no. Mike, what we are doing, we are going to do all of that, but we are going to do them when they come up.
Oh, well, it's sort of come up that this is in context with the eternal recurrence, that these cycles repeat, each time getting better and better.
Okay, got it. So what you're saying is that this cycle, the three-stage cycle, keeps repeating again and again, getting higher and higher. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I'll put that as a question. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Next up is going to be Phil, Eric, David, and Laura. Phil, what's your question?
Well, it's actually the question of the group. We started out by asking, like, why are there only three categories?
Okay.
And we concluded that it was just the beginning, because And it went back to, in a sense.
No answers. So I will post that as a question, Phil.
Okay.
Why are
good.
there only 3 categories? Let people answer that. Okay.
Okay, good.
Thanks. Next up is Mushki. Mushki, go ahead.
What? No, I already asked my question.
Oh, you already asked. Oh, sorry about that. Eric followed by David and Laura. Eric.
Don't we need to ebb and flow between these 3 spirits in order to succeed in life?
Wonderful. Don't we need to toggle or switch between them to succeed? Wonderful. Excellent. Next up is David.
Yes, well, Phil has already asked my question, which is, why are we attempting to crush the rich tapestry of diverse humanity into a mere 3 categories?
Okay, wonderful. I will put that tapestry of your verbiage on the top of Phil's question, and I will present it that way. Wonderful. Excellent. Next up is, let's see, Laura. Laura, what's your question?
I guess I'm curious why there's never any mention about the learned, some point at which we bring in the educator or, in this process.
Okay. Why is there no mention of a
I don't know,
teacher or learned?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay, very good. All right, so we got good number of questions. Okay, let's go quickly through it. All right. Okay, so where should we start? Let's see here. Okay, let's start with why are there only 3? And if you wanted to add 1 more, having the same power as this, okay, you can't cheat by saying, oh, there is this little kind of variation. No. It has to have the same kind of power as these 3. Would you add anything? So if you want to answer the question, go ahead and type exclamation mark. Evanik.
When I thought of that, why are they 3, beginning, middle, end? Or that's the way I thought of it. It's just beginning, middle, and I don't know if I would add any more. I think the more you add, the more complicated it gets.
Got it. Wonderful. David, Joe, Dave, and Judith. David, what do you think? You have argued for the tremendous richness of life, and you're very disappointed that these are only 3 things. If you had to add a 4th, which speaks as loudly as these 3, roars as loudly as these 3, what would you choose?
Sound like a game show.
Supposing I wanted to become a dragon.
Dragon. Okay, that's not bad. That's actually pretty good, because it kind of, he represents dragon. He's using dragon to represent all of culture. So the dragon already appears, but excellent point. Sorry about the interruption. Let me go ahead. Let's see here. Joe, Dave, and Judith. Joe.
So the question is, wait a minute, what will we add, or why 3?
So why 3, and would you add anything? Is it missing anything?
I don't think it's missing anything. I'm wondering if, and this could be.
Sorry, Joe. Let me interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
So it's like we are being alliance here. Okay. You're
Okay.
saying, don't be a camel. The tradition has put 3 on the table. Is there more? No. This is not good enough.
And the Overman is.
Can you be a child and discover some new butterfly in there?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to come back on you. Come back with that. I mean, I guess the Overman wouldn't count into that process, because that would be kind of the child. So that would be the 4th. But I'm wondering if there's, we've talked about the Freud aspect of why there may be 3, but is there a religious component that he's countering as to why there are 3? If you think about the Trinity, like, that the idea that, that's somehow makes up, he's countering religion altogether. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Dave, followed by Judith. Dave.
Well, great minds think alike. So I will follow my lower hemisphere, brother David, in agreeing the dragon should be the other character. I'm just surprised because it's such a powerful character in the story, why it isn't part of the metamorphosis. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Judith, followed by David. Judith.
I'm okay with 3. I don't know why it's 3. I wasn't feeling very comfortable about it, but actually Mike S helped me feel better about it because when I began to think of it as a cyclical nature, so that we take on this burden, then we destroy it, we take it apart, then we kind of look at it fresh like a child with curiosity again, and then we end up reburdening ourselves as a camel again, take it apart. And so hopefully we all evolve through the process. So if I think of it that way, I'm okay with it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is David, Madeline, David and Madeline. David.
Well, there are thousands of varying types of lions. And a lot of lions want to become dragons. They're authoritarian rebels who want to impose their system on everybody else. So they actually want to become dragons. I mean, but there, as I said, there are thousands of different types of categories of lion, for example.
Thank you. Next up is Madeline.
I would add 4th element, I would add the sage. I think that's what's missing. The child is young and vulnerable and has no real experience. So I would add the sage.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madeline. Next up is Phil.
Yeah, I would add the butterfly, which is in your graphics, because the dream. Because I would add that because that could be something that adds a folly to the story.
Wonderful. So my answer to that is that I think it's the same, going back to Jordan Peterson, Camel is order. Lion is seeing that there is chaos, and the child is trying to put these things together. It's the one that is skating at both. It respects both of them and is working with both of them to build something. And so I think, I think because it is eternal recurrence, you can do kind of the fractal version of it. You can do like you can do like the lion part of the child, or the camel part of the child, or the child part of the lion. So you can do kind of fractals from it to allow for many things, like the kinds of different kinds of lions you can have. So it's a very powerful structure that is there, that I think many people have used in multiple ways. Thank you.
But wait a minute. But the butterfly, particularly in the butterfly dream, is that it adds an element of self-criticism.
Very good. Very good. And I think the sage is also a very good candidate if you wanted to add a 4th one. But in that sense, I see the sage as being simply a child who has grown up. So I look at somebody like Leonardo, I see him as a child and as a sage at the same time, with a child who has been at it for a long enough time, something like that. Next up is going to be about you and these stages. This is kind of combination of Joe's question and Mushki's question. How do you know where you are? To what extent, how do you evaluate yourself in these terms? To what extent are you a camel? To what extent are you a lion? To what extent are you a child? how, how is this something that you can actually use to think about yourself? So that's the question. You can go ahead and type exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom in order to answer. Evanik, followed by Eric. Evanik.
I think you can be all three. I'm going to do a little bit of a cop out there. And what I mean by that is that I think in different areas of our life, we could be different things. Like you could be the camel and submit to what you don't know and knowingly take on things. That way you can learn. You could be the lion, and then once you learn or once you realize something's off, you can say no and you can knock that off a little bit. And then you could be the child in that you can willingly take, I think you can willingly take on the burden and know why and create something new out of it. So I think depending on what area of your life it is, you could be all three things at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Evanik. Next up is Eric, Joe, Judith, Rupali, and Laura. Eric.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before in one of my answers. I think I was a camel, and when I was, being a Catholic, I think I wanted to see what else is out there. So I think I had enough courage to say no, and the lion. So I think I'm personally somewhere between the lion and the child, an early child in that regard. That's just how I see myself.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Joe, Judith, Rupali, and Laura. Joe.
So if I took Eric's answer, would that make me a camel again? Like, I mean, no,
It depends whether you take the answer and then rebel against part of it and then come up with a completely new answer of your own, then you would be all three.
Oh, good. Then I'm definitely going to do that. No, because just to prove, no, I think that this is, because I actually thought about this today. If looking at this, where am I in this process? I'm not the camel anymore, but I'm definitely somewhere between. I'm trying to get to the point where I get to a sacred yes. So I can't say that I'm a child either, but I definitely gotten to the point of sacred no. And so I guess I'm creating space, and 52 living ideas is helping. So there.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Wonderful. Next up is Judith and Rupali. Judith.
I agree with Evanik. I think that hopefully we're a little bit of all of them in different areas of our lives, in different capacities at all times. It would seem very wrong and somehow if we were just camel. I mean, predominantly, yes, at some points in our life, I think we were just camel. And then when you come out of it and you're a lion and you're kind of looking at things, you recognize how much of a camel maybe you were. And then later on when you're inquisitive, but just in different areas, you may be more or less of a camel, more or less of a lion, and a little bit of a child. And I'd like to think that all of us have a little bit of all three going at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Rupali.
So I'm going to piggyback on that thought that, we are in a continuum, and part of it is reflection, because one of the questions was, could we regress from one of these stages? And if we are not conscious and not aware, then it is easy to regress. And I'm thinking of Napoleon Hill's idea of being on track and off track, and always trying to come back to the track. And that's only through self-awareness and being conscious and practicing these three stages, because these three stages are required through the continuum of our own self-improvement.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Rupali. Next up is going to be Laura, followed by Phil. Laura, what do you think? Where do you fall in these three?
Well, that's it. I think all of it. I think when I was young, I carried a burden of sort of the values of my family versus what I felt my values. And I think they were, definitely attached a lot to the late 60s kind of thing going on, and I didn't take a traditional route after high school and blah, blah, blah. And so then I got to this other point where it became will, and I started doing work where I was always in a will position. I was always doing will, and spent a lot of years in that mode. And then, of course, there was this other period where, trauma struck and I came out and have to be, and that's when I had almost to be child again. And that's where I've been since. And it's been fun. And so here I am.
Thank you, Laura.
Metamorphosis. And it's just the two ideas having to has helped me in this process more than you can imagine.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next up is Phil.
Of course, when I was very young, I was a child. But when I got
no, Phil, that I can't believe it.
No, no,
You started.
No, I was a child, and then what happened was, like, when I got to elementary school on up to high school, I think I was a camel. I was very obedient, pay attention to my adults and all that kind of stuff. But when I got to college, I became a combination already of the child again and the lion, because I became rebellious, and also, of course, a wonderment in college. All the possibilities began to open up, and it remained that way. I think right now I'm still, well, you're still a combination of all three, but nonetheless, primarily a child and then a lion, because you have to, in society, be rebellious, at the same time, be innocent, and be wondering about all sorts of things. In fact, there's two very special occasions that I've experienced when I actually didn't do any art because I was physically impaired. I knew that I was an artist. I knew it. Before that, I actually had to do art to prove to myself I was an artist, but I knew I was without doing any art itself.
Wonderful. Thank you, Phil. All right, let me just make sure. Okay, next question is about the nature of the child. Okay, this is the final question. We're going to take different aspects of it. You can talk about what are the limitations of the child that Mushki was talking about. We can talk about what this child metaphor means. Is this something, is it similar to the Jesus metaphor? What is child? What is a child, and what are your thoughts about it? Because in some ways, this is like the culmination. That is the culmination of those three. Mushki.
So the limitation of the child, I believe, is that children are impatient. And I believe that it's connected to regression, so at least for me, I think that I attained at some point the level of a child, but then the results weren't coming as quickly as I hoped. I believe that now that I was a child, the results should come quicker, and I regress because of my impatience. So I think there's something there, that a limitation of a child is that they're impatient.
Thank you. Next up is Joe.
So yes, I mean, in a way, the child, and this is what I kind of, in a way, was trying to say when it linking the yes and the no, brings everything full circle, and in a way is redeeming everything else. So you know, by becoming full circle, you're actually redeeming the camel, the lion, and you're becoming something more. So I look at it in a redemptive sense. I know that's a really religious dynamic, but again, I think that there's that aspect of it there, that it's overcoming all the other stages of the metamorphosis.
Yeah, no, I think that is actually very profound, because I think it's like rebirth. It is kind of being born again. You're trying to restart, kind of look at the nature afresh and reintegrate. It is like in the OODA loop, it's kind of reorientation. It's kind of coming back and saying, instead of being caught up in the ways or saying no to something, because no to something can only be a beginning. Because if you just keep saying no, then there is nowhere you're going actually. But this is, a child is kind of, it's rebirth. So I think it very much connects to that. Next up is going to be Madeline, followed by Phil. Madeline.
Yes, just to add on to what Joe is saying, as I recall in a recent meetup, I forget which one, Sanjay was quite kept bringing the focus back to the importance of the way our brains work. It's not just the executive function, that we have all the older ones going all the time. And what Joe had said much earlier in this current meetup about the child remembering having also been the camel and the lion, I thought was a very good point.
Wonderful. I wanted to add one thing. Again, we're trying to kind of compare different kind of series of thoughts from all kinds of sources. There is a fantastic documentary called Ascent of Man by Jacob Bronowski.
Mhm.
And the final episode in that is called The Long Childhood. If you don't watch the whole thing, it is the best documentary that has ever been made. It is, I think, the second documentary that was ever made. When BBC Two started. And it ends with the episode called Long Childhood. If you look at human evolution, or if you look at evolution and then look at the primate tree, as we advance, our childhood becomes more and more. So human beings are characterized by long childhood. And what is the meaning of that? That means we come into this world with our brain only half formed. And rest of the brain is formed in interaction with others and the world to learn. And Jacob Bronowski's idea is that that is what really characterizes us, the long childhood. When I look at all the great thinkers that I know of, all of them actually seem to be younger, getting younger and younger, more like a child as they grow in power, whether it is Leonardo da Vinci or Louis Sullivan. You see that, they actually don't lose the curiosity. Their curiosity keeps increasing as their power. Most people, they're like a camel, its view of possibilities are limited by what the society has given it. Whereas somebody like Leonardo is actually looking at nature afresh to see what is possible and is relentlessly coming up with something. So I think the image of the child, he also, another point that Jacob Bronowski makes, he's a very deep thinker, and I strongly recommend both as a book and as especially the last episode, but all the episodes. His point is that if you look at traditional cultures, they regard adult as the pinnacle of value. You can see, for example, Easter Island, those faces, he uses those. And the child is being told, you have to grow to be that. And that is the end, and that's it, you're done. In the West, child is valued. And that is a complete turn. So in that sense, when you're saying an adult is what you're aiming at, camel is the ideal. So you grow up to be a camel, and then that is good. That is how most traditional societies are. The West prizes the child, which is dramatically different. And I think that's what the significance of this metaphor is. All right, Phil.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I want to point out something. The child is full of inquisitiveness and wonderment, but also the child is very vulnerable. It needs a support structure. And of course, at the beginning, he has support structure because his parents and other people are very tolerant. But as you grow up, what you learn is to be your own protector to survive in a society so that you could remain a child. But so without the support structure, without a degree of the camelness within you, to be a burden to yourself so you could actually live, and without the protector of the lion to protect yourself from harm others might provide you, as well as nature, then it becomes a problem. So in order to have the child, you have to internalize to a degree the adult without forgetting the child. This is the paradox that we all must solve in order to grow up and continue to be a child.
Beautifully put. I completely agree. I mean, when you look at the ideal in Tao Te Ching, the Chinese ideal, the ideal is not the child, but the sage. And sage has childlike qualities of curiosity and openness to nature. At the same time, the sage has profound understanding of how nature is working and how culture is working. So another way of looking at it is Camel is the culture, there is nature, and the child is able to leverage the culture to give it sustenance. And you absolutely need that. You also need that element of being able to say no, that rebelliousness, because otherwise you're going to lose. And then you need the ability of integration, of being able to put things together to create something new that never existed before. And so absolutely, all three. Great point, Phil. Next up is Evanique.
When you were talking about the sage, what I was thinking is, I think the sage is all three. You might have said it already, but like the sage is really all three combined. It's the camel in that it accepts nature for what it is. It doesn't try to change it. It almost allows it to just be. It's the lion in that it says no to the things that it needs to say no to, like having and I'm thinking of the Tao, like in having too many things or overly complicating your life unnecessarily. The sage says no to that. And then the child is just the mysteriousness, the wonder, the curiosity of, just like enjoying it, like enjoying the wonder of nature, enjoying the mystery of nature, still asking questions, but like not looking for the correct answer, not trying to be the smartest person in the room, sometimes observing, sometimes answering, sometimes questioning. So I see it as all three, the sage.
Absolutely, that very well put. Very well put. So this is fantastic. I mean, I can't believe how this conversation. I think this format is working really well, and I think we'll be able to do. Joe, this might become your favorite meetup. Okay.
There's a chance. I think so.
I know.
Don't ask me tomorrow night, though.
But I think this is good. I think this is great dialogue. We are able to actually talk about. I mean, partly it is Nietzsche, partly it is all Nietzsche. Just like in Tao Te Ching, it's Lao Tzu. Our primary debt is to him and to them, because like they have managed to capture so much meaning in such short space, where we are able to talk about this. And I'm just tremendously grateful to all of you of just the richness of the dialogue here. So Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to pose one more thing, is that despite the fact that Nietzsche is rebellious, he is amazingly in alignment with Western thinking. I'm sure he's influenced by Eastern thinking to a certain degree. He is actually building a foundational structure in which metaphysics has been eliminated And he understands that, and he now building a foundational structure that builds up rather than metaphysics throwing down, which is very, very different from Eastern culture in a sense. So to that degree, he is actually quite in alignment despite of his rebelliousness, which is sort of very, very interesting.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And that's another reason I want to do this, because I wanted to find something in the West, because there are really three big cultures that you need to master. You need to master the West, you have to master China, and you have to master India. These are kind of the really large cultures which have produced, a billion people each, about the same size throughout history. They have got all very deep traditions. And there is a lot that these three can learn from each other. And I wanted to find something, and I think in Tao Te Ching, we have found something really, really good. In the Chinese tradition, very much deeply, which is deeply Chinese in tradition. At the same time, it really speaks to everybody. And I think I have struggled to find something in the West, because not because of that it doesn't exist, of course, but because we are so familiar with it. Like, we're familiar with the entire corpus. So it's like anything that you pick. Actually, there are many, many such things. We're doing this with the Bible, with Jordan Peterson. We're doing it with Nietzsche. Maybe we'll pick up a couple other things like that. So we'll probably need to take like a couple other things. And I'm hoping to do this for something Indian, like Bhagavad Gita or the Yoga Sutras, or something which also brings in that point of view. But the thing I particularly like about Zarathustra and Nietzsche is that he's an artist. He is an amazing artist. I mean, the way he's able to actually portray, look at these three, with just three simple concepts, how much he's able to communicate. Most philosophers can't do that. They are, it is much more drier, and you have to read a lot in order to get that. But that's what it is. So folks, thank you very much. This has been amazing, and I will see you. I'm going to continue doing this every Monday, and we will go from that. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Thank
Sure,
you.
Thank you,
Thomas, it gets
Shrikant.
better.
This is
Bye.
great.
It gets better. and
Thank you,
better.
Shrikant.
Bye.
Thank you.
This
Thank
is
you. That's
Bye.
awesome.
amazing.
Bye.
Thank